Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to Sunny Side of the Dome. I'm your host, Karen Soutar, and I'm here to talk some Blue Jays baseball with you for the next half hour or so. Sunny Side of the Dome is brought to you by Jays from the Couch. We stream live on Thursdays at 6 p.m., and you can find us on Jays from the Couch's YouTube channel, Facebook page, or Twitter page. And if you have the time and you are following along live and you have any questions or comments, please do send them on in. I love that interaction. I think it makes the show just that much better. I love to get other viewpoints and so forth. And if you don't catch the live version, no problem. When you're ready for us, we're ready for you. You can always catch the archived version on any one of those mediums, so Facebook, Twitter, or the YouTube page. And if you like the content here at Sunny Side of the Dome, there's lots more where that came from. There's Jays from the Couch's main podcast, which comes to you Mondays at 6 p.m. That's hosted by Sean Doyle, as senior editor, founder of Jays from the Couch. And Sean has always got lots of interesting angles. There's himself. There's anybody who he has on there with him. So often other Jays from the Couch writers. I'm often on, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but he's had various different guests. So professional media that cover MLB for a living, Shai Davidi, Keegan Matheson, sometimes people who cover other teams, and even players. Jordan Romano was on a while back in the off season, so definitely worth checking out. And if you don't catch the live version there, that is actually available as a radio podcast. So you can download and listen to that. Basically, any quality podcast carrier, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, you can find Jays from the Couch anywhere. And the other YouTube show that you should definitely check out if you haven't been is the Unfect Circle. That's usually Tuesdays at 6 p.m., although it was on yesterday this week instead of Tuesday. And the Unfect Circle is hosted by Steve Feck, my crazy colleague with lots of interesting opinions. Steve is a very smart guy. He has tons and tons of knowledge about the baseball world, and he always makes me think about things in a way that I hadn't before. And then a lot of the time I end up forming my own opinion and disagreeing with him, and that's fine. we agree to disagree. But if you haven't been checking out the Unfect Circle, you should definitely do so. Steve is very worth a watch, a listen, or whatever you want to do there. So, happy Thursday evening, Blue Jay fans. How's everybody doing? Hope all is well. Things are pretty good with me. A small personal note, I've actually been taking vacation from my full-time job for the last few days. I had some vacation days that I hadn't really been using. So I thought, why not take a few days off, give myself a long weekend, and stay up and watch our Blue Jays on the West Coast. So yeah, it's been interesting to watch. Lots of great things happening with the team, and more to talk about a little later. Leading off as usual, some housekeeping things, ins and outs transactions, what's going on with the team over the last 7 days or so. So Kirby Snead, he was actually called back up, and not a bad thing. So let's see what else he can do with the team. I mean, in very small sample size, he's done well so far. So see how that goes. Patrick Murphy, this was a little bit of a head scratcher to me, I have to be honest. So he was called back up, and then they needed a roster spot both on the 26-man and on the 40-man, and Patrick Murphy, of all people, was actually DFA'd. And I'll be honest, I can't really figure out a reason for that. His overall numbers weren't really that great. But then I looked recently to see if he's still struggled, and his last few outings have actually been scoreless. himself. And yeah, I mean, he did pretty well last year in limited appearances. His overall numbers, as I said, weren't that great this year, but he had options. So I'm not sure what the team is thinking here. I mean, maybe he clears waivers, but I don't know. I mean, pitching with a possible upside, I can very much see someone else claiming him. So have to see how that goes, and yeah, that'll be interesting. A couple of pitchers have gone on the injured list. Tim Meza, unfortunately, was having a very good season for the Jays, and hopefully he will be again. They're saying elbow inflammation. On the other hand, excuse me, and it doesn't sound from what people on the inside are saying that they're all that concerned about it. So hopefully it's just a thing where he needs a little bit of rest, and that he might be back sooner than later, knock on wood, because the Jays can definitely use him. Ross Stripling, interesting. So he started the second game of the doubleheader this past Tuesday, pitched 2 scoreless innings, and then ended up leaving, and people are like, what's going on? Like, leaving after 2 scoreless. But yeah, he had he had a problem, and not appendix, abdomen. So yeah, I know he's on the injured list. And the last I heard, they didn't really have a timetable for him, but that he would definitely miss a start. And now he's on the IL. So interesting the way these things kind of work themselves out, in that after the team traded for Jose Barrios, they had 6 bona fide MLB starters. I mean, I'm definitely counting Manoah in that group with the performance that he's had as a rookie. I don't think there's any thought at all of sending him back down or moving him to the bullpen. So, and the other guys are all veterans with a certain amount of experience and success, varying from person to person. But yeah, so with 6 starters, people were wondering, would they stay with the 6-man rotation? Would somebody go to the bullpen? And then we've got Stripling on the IL. So for now, we know who the 5 starters are, knock on wood, and see what happens with Stripling, and get all the best, get well soon, and all of that there. Ryan Baracki, he was actually optioned to AAA Buffalo. Not a huge shock. Unfortunately, his last few outings with the Blue Jays really weren't all that good. And I mean, the Blue Jays really need Ryan Baracki to be the best version of himself. I still believe in him as a major league talent. I mean, he's had success in the past with the Blue Jays, and I think he will again. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully it's just something where he needs to get back to being successful, whether he needs to make an adjustment, and does that down in AAA where, knock on wood, he's not harming a contending team with his outings. So wish him all the best. Hope he gets back sooner than later. And excuse me for just a second. I'll be back sooner than later. Okay, so Trenton Thornton, my goodness. Up, down, up, down, up. That's been the last 7 days for him. So the Blue Jays have played 2 doubleheaders in the last week. So one this past Saturday at home in Toronto, and then, as I mentioned earlier, the doubleheader this past Tuesday in Anaheim, where interestingly the Jays were the home team on the road in Anaheim due to a postponement back in April. So yeah, you're allowed to, for a doubleheader, you're allowed to add a 27th man, and in both cases that was Trent Thornton. So he was added for Saturday, then he was optioned on Sunday, and then I'm sure they had it planned out in advance that he was going to be the 27th man again for Tuesday. So of course he went with the team out to Anaheim, and then he was optioned again after that game where you can't carry the 27th man anymore. But then when Stripling needed to go on the IL, he was brought back up. So, yeah, Thornton's had an up and down ride, being optioned back and forth, as well as his performance. At times, he's been really good. At times, not so much. So, fingers crossed that we can see the good version going forward. And Tommy Malone, remember him? He was with the team very early in the season. He was really good. And then he wasn't so good. Then he went on the IL. He's actually been released now. So all the best to him. Hope he catches on somewhere else and does well, just not against the Blue Jays. And speaking of pitchers that were with the Jays quite some time ago, remember AJ Cole? So he's been sent on a rehab assignment now. So it'd be interesting to see if he can come back and contribute. And with I mentioned Patrick Murphy being DFA'd, they needed a 40-man roster spot because Connor Overton has actually been called up to the team, and he was not yet on the 40-man roster, so they had to get him onto the 40-man roster to be able to put him on the 26-man roster. So he's interesting. He's 27 years old. So far, he's a career minor leaguer, has yet to actually get into an MLB game. So let's see if there's an opportunity to use him sometime in the near future. Maybe there'll be a blowout game or something like that. Might be a way to ease him into MLB rather than, okay, throw him right into the fire, getting into some sort of leverage situation, but we'll see. So yeah, 27 years old, had a very good season for the Blue Jays with the Buffalo Bisons, the AAA team, got into 21 games, and he had an ERA just over 2 with them at 2.03. So again, they're getting a look at some different guys. So first Kirby Snead and now Connor Overton. So let's see, maybe these guys can actually help. And yeah, fingers crossed there. So from there on to the heart of tonight's order, the Blue Jays, the team, they've made some moves, and for me, I think as fans, we're really seeing the dividends. We're seeing those moves pay off. So first, literally the move that they made coming back to Toronto, their actual home, finally being allowed to play games in Toronto after a very long absence, after starting the season with a home in Dunedin for the first couple of months. And then after that in Buffalo, and now they're finally back in Toronto. And hey, interesting note, again, mentioning the doubleheader on Tuesday in Anaheim, where they played the first game as the home team. So they've now played home games in 4 different cities, 4 different stadiums, all in the same year. So an interesting thing there. And yeah, I mean, I honestly think that coming home to Toronto has had a really positive effect. The morale, having the home team fans actually cheering for you, which really didn't happen much at all in Dunedin. It was better in Buffalo, but then there were certain teams, Yankees, Red Sox, that they seem to have the advantage as far as what the crowd was cheering for down there. So now, I mean, in the 11 games so far at the Rogers Center in Toronto, it's been pretty strongly pro Blue Jays, as it should be. And the Jays had a great homestand, and they were 9-2. I mean, you can't ask for much better than that. That's been absolutely fantastic. And I don't know if you, like me, spend a lot of time on social media, and particularly Twitter. I'm on there a lot. And the Blue Jays official Twitter account, they put out a tweet that, 9-2 because of you, Canada. That's about the homestand. And I mean, you can look at that and say, okay, this is the social media account manager doing their job and trying to engage the fans and making the fans feel like they're part of the team and part of the success. And hopefully the interest will continue and build that way. But you know what? I don't actually see that that's all there is to it. Let's put it that way. I really think that being at home and being in front of fans that are cheering for you, I think that it had a positive impact on the way that they played and and the results. I think that's the 10th man. They talk in the NBA about the sixth man being the crowd. And I think maybe the 10th man for the Toronto Blue Jays, at least in that homestand, was the pro Blue Jays fan base being able to be at the games. I was at 3 games myself. And yeah, I mean, it's just been terrific since the last time we were here together. They've gone 6-2. So again, can't complain about that. They've won the last few series. They're leading this series against the Anaheim Angels 2-1 with a chance to win the series this evening. So fingers crossed. And yeah, I mean, in terms of the other moves that the Jays have made, it's an ongoing thing, obviously, to improve the team. I mean, they brought in Jordan Springer in the offseason, and at first, the dividends for that, for the Jays on the field, really weren't there because he was injured and he missed a lot of the first part of the season. So he's not going to help you win when he's not on the field playing. But since he's been back, oh my goodness. I mean, worth every penny. He's just been absolutely phenomenal. Back-to-back American League Player of the Week awards, and he's already got what is it? 3 home runs this week already. I mean, is he going for the trifecta? What's going on here? But yeah, I mean, that move was just great. And he's really contributing to the team, absolutely. The in-season moves, I mean, earlier in the year, the bullpen, it started off good, and then it really kind of fell apart, and the Blue Jays lost a whole bunch of winnable games, largely because of the bullpen just falling apart. And they knew that things needed to be done, and they did them. They went out in season and made 4 trades with 4 different teams for experienced MLB relief pitching help. And I mean, Joaquin Soria, he had the one good outing, and now he's on the injured list. So fingers crossed that he can come back and contribute. The 2 big contributors so far that I've been so impressed with, Adam Cimber, Trevor Richards. I mean, those 2 have just been phenomenal. Cimber in particular, I mean, nobody's getting anything off of him, and I'm a big fan of Jordan Romano, and I hope that he'll be the Blue Jays closer for the next several years and have a lot of success that way. But I mean, if Romano pitched recently, if he had to throw a lot of pitches and he can maybe use a day or so off, Adam Cimber is a good plan B, closer number 1A, whatever you want to call him, however you want to look at it. But it's just been really great the way they went out and improved the bullpen. And Brad Hand, you know what? I'm still hopeful that he's going to turn it around. His first couple of outings as a Blue Jay weren't so good, but then since then he's had a couple of scoreless outings, and he was very good earlier in his career, including this season. So I'm hopeful that he's going to be a positive contributor, and yeah, that he can really help the team hold on to some leads and win some games. Excuse me just a moment. So yes, and that brings me to the biggest in-season acquisition that the Blue Jays made, of course, Jose Barrios. I mean, they gave up 2 of their top 5 prospects at the time, Austin Martin, Simeon Woods Richardson. Again, wish the 2 of them all the luck in the world with the Minnesota Twins organization. But let's face it, neither of them were going to help the Toronto Blue Jays this season, and they wanted immediate help, particularly in the rotation. And they were willing to pay the price in terms of prospect capital. And so far, it really looks like they got some good help back in Barrios. He has had 2 starts for the Blue Jays. He's been fantastic. He's pitched 6 innings in each of the 2 starts, and so far has only given up the 1 run. I will absolutely take that. I mean, how can you ask for anything better than that? And tonight's matchup should be a very interesting one. Barrios is starting for the Jays against the Anaheim Angels with a chance to win the series, but going up against Shohei Ohtani. And what can you say about Shohei Ohtani? You've got to give a shout out to him. I mean, there have been great pitchers, and there have been great pitchers while he's doing both at the same time in one season. That hasn't been done since Babe Ruth, before they made Babe Ruth an outfielder. So, yeah, I mean, he's something special. If you have the chance to watch him, he's worth the price of admission, so to speak. But I don't want him to beat the Blue Jays. He almost did yesterday with a 2-run home run against Alek Manoah, but other than that, Manoah was lights out, got the win in a convincing 10-2 victory, and yeah, so this evening's matchup should be very good. Of course, my pro Blue Jay bias is there, but I can see it being a very low scoring affair. But I can see the Blue Jays coming up out on top because I think they have more offensive weapons as a team. So, I mean, now Vladimir Guerrero Jr. seems to have cooled off a little bit. No, I'm not worried about it, not in the long run. I absolutely have no doubt about his talent. I didn't prior to this season. I didn't know that he's finally slumping a bit. But I mean, even without him firing on all cylinders, so to speak, now you've got George Springer doing what Guerrero Jr. was doing earlier in the season and has temporarily taken a break from being all that productive. But I know he'll go back to it. And when it isn't for him, I mean, you've got Teoscar Hernandez hitting a grand slam last night, and Hernandez has really done well. He's done well overall, and he's another one that's heated up a lot lately. Haven't seen the lineup yet. I don't know if Bo Bichette will need another day off. He's got the two leg contusions because he fouled a couple of balls off himself. So, I mean, hopefully he feels well enough to play because so much the better for him and for the Blue Jays. But if he needs some more time, then definitely give him that time. His health, for his sake and for the long term of the team, is the more important thing. So, but yeah, I mean, I just see that the Jays have all these different weapons, as I was saying, whereas the Angels, they've got Shohei Ohtani. Other than that, they've got Mike Trout, who's on the injured list. Anthony Rendon is on the injured list. They released Albert Pujols, who's now with the Dodgers. And yeah, so if they can contain Shohei Ohtani offensively, then I think they have a good chance to win this game. And yeah, I mean, it's very interesting right now, scoreboard watching, looking at the standings, because it's all bunched up very tightly together. So the Jays, as of when I went on the air, were 6.5 games out of first place in the American League East. So there's enough time, and if they really, really stay hot, they could still win that division. That's not really something that I'm expecting to see this season. I've been saying all along, I think they're a wild card team in 2021. I still think that, even with the additions, just because I think the Tampa Bay Rays are very good, and I don't see them faltering enough to give up first place in the division. So that's what I think there. But I mean, the wild card games, the wild card teams, I think that's very doable. So they were 2.5 games out of the second wild card and 4 games out of the first wild card. So they're still chasing the New York Yankees. They're a half a game behind the Yankees, and the Yankees play in this much publicized Field of Dreams game today, this evening, versus the Chicago White Sox. That pitching matchup, at least on paper, heavily favors the White Sox. So, as a Blue Jays fan, go White Sox, please. It would be great if today was the day in 2021 that the Blue Jays caught and passed the Yankees for the final time and just stay ahead of them for the rest of the season. And then you've got the Boston Red Sox that are just free falling. They've lost a whole bunch of games, and actually an interesting game right now going on between the Tampa Bay Rays and the Boston Red Sox. And before we went on the air, Tampa Bay had actually taken a 3-1 lead. I don't know the current situation with the score or anything like that. But I'm actually kind of cheering for Tampa Bay to win that game again. Just as I said, I feel like it's a long shot for the Blue Jays to catch the Rays for the AL East lead, but I think they can and will catch and pass the Red Sox. And if the Red Sox win, and let's not get ahead of ourselves, the Blue Jays have to win today in order to gain any ground on anybody. But assuming that they do, and I think that the chances favor them, that, yeah, the Red Sox are definitely within reach. I think the Blue Jays will catch and pass them. I think the Jays are going to the playoffs. I keep saying it, so I'm saying it again. Anyway, we're almost out of time for this evening, so that brings me to Through Blue Jay Colored Glasses. So, talking about the team, the outlook for this season, but I'm even going back 1 or 2 years because I look at this as a progression. So, as we all know, the Jays went to the playoffs 2015 and 2016, and those teams were great, and that was so much fun for the fans of the Blue Jays. But as MLB players, as MLB goes, a lot of those players were older, and so some regression was bound to happen, and a lot of it happened pretty fast. So 2017, 2018, they were sort of in limbo. I mean, on paper, they were a team that was trying to contend, but realistically, they really didn't get anywhere and ended up being sellers at the deadline on both of those years. 2019 was the first year of the official rebuild. And with the talent that this front office, some of it was Alex Anthopoulos, but a lot of it was Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins, the talent that they had built in the farm system through drafts and trades as well, trading for players like Teoscar Hernandez in 2017. So it actually ended up being a really quick turnaround. So the team's record in 2019, 67-95. Not good at all, but really, if you were following the team throughout the whole season, as I was, because I just can't turn them off, it was really the first half of the season, the beginning through the end of June, where they did a lot of that losing. And then in the second half of the season, particularly after the All-Star break, that they had already improved a lot as a team compared to where they were earlier in the season. They were close to 500 when you just look at the second half of the season. So that's a heck of a lot better than their record was on paper. 2020, they were a playoff team. Yes, that happened because of the expanded playoff format that they used in 2020 only. And it's kind of interesting because before the season started and before I had any inkling whatsoever that there were going to be 8 teams per league instead of 5 going to the playoffs, I was saying that the Blue Jays would be knocking on the door in 2020 as far as being a wild card team. I didn't think they would be one, but I think that going down to the wire in the last week of the season, they would still have a chance to be one of the wild card teams. And interestingly, if that season plays out exactly the way it did without the expanded playoffs, I think that's pretty much what you would have seen. That they were getting close to being a playoff team when only 5 teams a league make the playoffs, but that they weren't quite there yet. And now you look at this year. You look at the improvements that they've made by free agent signings, by trades in season, and even in the off season, different moves that they've made to try to get better. You look at the internal improvements, the progression of young players like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., like Bo Bichette, like Teoscar Hernandez, who a couple of years ago they had to send him down to AAA during the season because he was doing so poorly, and he came back and he's really looked like a different player since then. They're working together, they're working on things. You look at the team defense. this year as compared to last year even, and it's night and day. And yeah, they still do have their games, like the first game of the doubleheader on Tuesday, unfortunately, where cue the circus music, but there's a lot fewer of those now than there were at this time last year. And I just think the progression is so exciting. One thing really caught my attention recently, and I looked at this past Sunday when unfortunately Hyunjin Ryu had a subpar start. He gave up a bunch of runs, he was done early, and the Blue Jays pitching staff as a team that day gave up 8 runs. I was thinking about that, and I remembered another day when Hyunjin Ryu just didn't have it, and the Blue Jays ended up giving up 8 runs after he made an early exit. And I'm talking about last year in Game 2 of the wild card playoff round. That the Blue Jays lost that game 8-2 once they got down and had given up all their runs. Basically, they seemed defeated. And as a fan, I watched that game till the end of the game because they're my Blue Jays and I rarely turn them off. But after they gave up all that runs, we pretty much knew that they were playing out the rest of that game and they were going to be done. Well, that didn't happen this past Sunday. It was hard to watch them give up all that runs and think that after all their hard work that they would just split a series with the Red Sox and not gain any ground on that particular team. Well, the Blue Jays didn't think that, and they didn't lay down on die. Was the difference? Was it George Springer and the 3-run home run that gave them the lead for good? I mean, that's definitely a part of it. You can't say that it wasn't, but I think that it's the whole team, the whole mentality that they look at themselves as a team differently now, that they know that they can win and they're never out of any game. They've got the offense to be able to come back and just bash anybody to death. And that's one way to win games. So I just think it's so exciting to see the progression as a team, and I can't wait to see how far they go. I'm sure they're getting into the playoffs this year, and I don't think it's going to be one game and done, or I think they're going to be very competitive and that they're going to be even better next year. But I'm worrying about next year. I'm very excited to see this season and what they can do this season. And yeah, bring on October baseball. And on that note, that's all I've got for you this week. Let's go Blue Jays. Let's hope they can win the series today, and I'll see you again next week.